context. Okay. Gia, your necklace is sideways.
Oh, well, let me fix that. If I wore it all in your honor, I feel like this feels immodest to do what I'm about to do, but Tamara gave us these necklaces a couple of years ago.
I love mine. It's on my jewelry desk
anyway,
thing.
That was not something I intended
Is
to
that,
do.
what's that one, neoephrine?
No, dopamine though.
Dopamine?
Close.
Yeah, but I've got an infinity necklace on.
Yeah.
So.
On Devs, they actually, the girl, the lead character on Devs, she wore that necklace.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wait, what is Devs?
Devs is that Alex Garland show on
that's the name.
Hulu FX. Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool of like what, I don't know if you guys are going to watch it, but what Devs actually stands for at the end. Because, you know, initially Devs you think is this, is their sort of secret R&D department of this larger AI company that, you know, sort of the genius runs. And Devs is like, you know, is their secret company that the girl tries to infiltrate because her boyfriend is killed or kills himself and she thinks he's been killed. But it actually stands for, the V is Roman. So it's actually a U. So it's Deus.
Ooh, nice.
So it's a little hat tip to his other movies and, you know, God.
God.
So God.
We do
Playing
a hat tip
God.
to God once in a while.
Playing God. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of playing God, I'm very curious about articles that everyone has brought. And Taryn, yours is nano. I'm making a link here between playing God and science.
Yes.
Nanoparticles?
Yes, magnetically charged nanoparticles that MIT has used in the adrenal gland of a rat. So and my sci-fi brain just went. So this is written by the MIT News Office. So this is actually their press release. And the article is titled Researchers Archive. How did my brain see that? That's weird. Researchers achieve remote control of hormone release. So we will link to this, and it's written by Anne Trafton. But what interested me about this is going back. So they've used very, very tiny nanoparticles that are magnetically charged, and they have inserted them into the adrenal glands being just on top of the kidneys of rats. And by running a very weak magnetic force, these nanoparticles then heat up the ion channels of the adrenal gland, releasing cortisol. So they technically now are able to manipulate hormone release, the first steps of hormonal release and control in an animal. And so they are talking about how this could ultimately help scientists to learn more about how hormone release influences mental health, helping PTSD. The thing that really, really intrigued me about this is that now they're not able to work in the brain yet, but the adrenal glands are part of the HPA axis, which is I always forget hold on, where am I? H is hypothalamus, P is pituitary, and A is adrenal. And so this is an axis that combines both the endocrine system and the nervous system. So the endocrine system is your hormonal glands and your endocrine, and then the nervous system is your brain. Now the HPA axis is made up of the adrenal gland, the pituitary, and the hypothalamus. So that's in your brain. So basically what's interesting about this is that by being able to affect the hormones in your body, you can actually affect the hormonal release and potentially the neurotransmitter release in the brain. So this could be remote brain access.
Wow.
Yes.
Now I know why your sci-fi brain went off.
So I highly recommend. It's a short research article that I initially saw sort of just in a, science news aggregator. But I'm curious to think, what do you guys think? I mean, it's one of those things where, hormones are control so much of our actions. And so if we're able to control them in a good way, obviously those could have positive benefits, but it seems like the negative benefits potentially outweigh this.
It's a tough call. I mean, my mom, being a woman, especially hormones are such a big issue. And my mom had a hysterectomy in her early to mid 30s. So, she kept her ovaries, but for a variety of reasons, she was on hormone therapy pretty early. So it's interesting to think about the variations that this could and the effects that this could have as they learn more about it.
Yeah, I am terrified at the entire concept of this because it seems like it could have such great application, but like you said, wow, at what steep. And I'm usually not the slippery slope argument sort of girl. Like that's not my lane at all. But I agree that it's remarkable, and I also just think it's remarkable too that we somehow we've come very far in our understanding of anatomy in general, right? And not to mention just neuroscience. But to think that, we thought we were filled with humors 500 years ago now. And, I imagine that 500 years from now, when they hear that we used heavy metals in cancer drugs, they'll be like, what barbarians, like
Yeah.
what monsters. So I assume too, because we've come so far, that there's likely going to be some sort of middle ground that is achieved probably over a long and dirty battle to kind of lay out the groundwork as to what's acceptable and what isn't. And certainly there will be black markets like anything else, right? I mean, that's just the reality.
Well, and it kind of continues the conversation we started in a previous episode about the line between scientific research so that we can get to a certain point of understanding how our systems work and how the complexities of the body work as, as cells build up, et cetera. And when that crosses over into practical application. So what scientific research do you allow for the sake of knowledge versus what happens when you actually put those applications into the real world? And where is that dividing line?
And, you think of these days, they say we live in the age of anxiety, and that was even before we were faced with this pandemic. And we have people that are continually living in sort of a stressor state where their levels of cortisol are elevated all the time, whether it's because of the sort of multi-pronged life we live, social media, just too many things to do. So the HPA axis is directly linked to stress, because when your body is in a fight or flight stressor state, it releases cortisol, it releases adrenaline. So if, the positive application here could be, wait, our bodies don't know that we're not actually in a stressor state, but this to-do list and multiple dings on our phone is putting us in there. But what if we have this ability to control our natural stressor response? So that we're not going into these hyper-inflammatory states, which potentially are causing a lot of health issues these days.
I mean, my brain just went to, what if you could continue to multitask and do all these things, but control not going there? And so we sort of become hyperhumans without that. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Amber Case, she's a futurist and a technologist, and she says we are cyborgs. We already are cyborgs in that we do interface with technology. It's not inside our body yet, but it is an appendage to us, just like a cyborg would be a person who has an arm that is a mechanical arm. We have a mechanical intelligence device tethered to us. So this is just that next step.
I know it was years ago now, but remember the film summit from Sloan that we went to, and there was the sort of Chinatown-esque futuristic film about water and mind control.
Yeah.
Even way back then, I have a girlfriend who was diagnosed with Parkinson's when she was 29, and she now has a permanent computer in her brain that is adjustable to help with her Parkinsonian symptoms. And in that particular movie that was about hacking people's brain to make them do something to basically, eliminate a crime trace kind of thing.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's then the next person who spoke at the Sloan Summit was a white hat hacker, which has its
Oh, I
own,
remember that one. Yeah.
yeah, and which has its own controversial thing. The idea that is there such a thing as a white
The
hat
white hat
hacker?
hacker.
Yeah, but that argument aside, you know, he said, you know, anything that is adjustable is hackable. Period. Anything. And I feel like, I don't know, are you of the generation, or of the mindset, I should say, that privacy is far more important to you than the convenience of what revealing it offers?
Oh, I go back and forth on that one all the time. How much am I giving up? What am I willing to have for free, you know, by giving up my privacy, by giving up my data?
I'm a privacy person. Any kind of bio tracker, you know, whether it's a Fitbit, Apple Watch, having the healthcare, you know, the healthcare system, having their app on my phone that then syncs to, you know, to get points. And I'm like, no, you're not gamifying my health. Thank you.
Oh no, I don't want
You know,
that. Like,
yeah.
I don't want that going out there. That's my information.
It's so interesting because I think I would have probably been far on the other side, saying like, yeah, but it's not that big a deal. I think I could have been on that side, but I'm going to make the argument for yes, for a totally different reason, which is um, just like purely economics in that sense. Because, okay, I like the idea that my data does have value, and then that service, I really do see it as transactional, and that maybe this is a part of a future economy that maybe I need to lean into. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but it's creepy nonetheless, right?
Well, that's actually a really good pivot point to my piece, which,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks, Gia, for the setup, which I'm actually really excited to talk about today. So hopefully I'll be coherent, but it's because I feel like it's a piece that really encapsulates so much of what Scirens is about. So let me go to share my screen. So my piece is from Wired. Let me
Ooh,
scroll to the top.
cool,
Yeah,
cool.
so there's some very cool graphics here, but it is, it's from Wired. It's by Lydia Horn. And it is about a school called, and a company called AnnieCannons, whose mission is to train former sex trafficker survivors to learn how to code and how to do data and all of that kind of stuff. And they've had an incredible amount of success. They are up in the Bay Area. And I found this piece in Wired, and then there's also another piece in the Huffington Post that actually goes into a much deeper dive, and I also include some case studies as well. But the thing that really I found to be inspiring about it is that, so the group, the company, was founded by Jessica Hubley, who worked in tech, and Laura Hackney, who's an attorney and also a researcher at Stanford. And they were working on a project together. And they realized that there were a few key factors when it came to why folks ended up as sex traffickers. And it really had to do with that their vulnerability was outside their control. They were desperately seeking work, and then someone would convince them that they had an opportunity for them, and they would really be able to put out that sense of trust and get them to buy into that. And then once they did, because the person had no other way of making money, had no other resources, the trafficker was able to control that person's movements and exploit them. So you take that set of circumstances, and it's really, really hard to escape. So their goal with this school was not only to be a boot camp, because there are a lot of booting camps. There's also a lot of coding boot camps around the country, several of which are aimed at women and young girls, but to set up an entire ecosystem for the challenges that these women often face, which very often includes childcare, because so many of them are single mothers. So while they're going through the training program, there's childcare. And then the other piece of it was economic security, so that once they are through the training program, they're able to transition them into full-time work if they want it. And they have a couple different kinds of tiers of work that they do, for folks who are more focused on data, for folks who are more focused on building things and coding things, different kinds of larger scale projects. But by creating that economic security for them, it allowed them to be empowered both economically and politically. You know, a lot of the projects that the women chose to work on help other folks in marginalized communities. So here is the AnnieCannons site. And one of the things that I like about it too is that they have a blog and they talk about why it's important to inspire future women in technology. They give you some of the stats. In 1995, 37% of computer scientists were women. Today, it's only 24%. Women hold fewer than 20% of US tech jobs. You know, a lot of girls, as we know, kind of fall through, they call it the leaky pipeline, where they're interested in careers in STEM early on, but then they get discouraged and lose interest as they get into the teenage years. So their website has a whole bunch of interesting information. And, you know, also they're a company. So I wanted to draw some attention to what they do, because in addition to, of course, they're always open for donations, but also you can hire them to work.
That's so cool.
So I love the way that they are combining social action with STEM. I think it's really neat. And so the other thing too is their name, which is AnnieCannons. So their name is inspired by Annie Jump Cannon, who was a pioneering female astronomer at the beginning of the 20th century. And in this video on YouTube, founder Laura Hackney talks about why. And right there, you can see a picture of Annie Jump Cannon from her time at Harvard University, where she actually trained several other pioneering female astronomers, like Henrietta Leavitt, and so many of the women we're so fond of. So as Scirens, you know, part of our mission, we have a glossed over initiative where we draw attention to the stories of people who have been glossed over, usually in history, women, people of color, LGBTQ, STEM folks, and try to shine a light on them. And I think it's really interesting that this particular school, this particular company, has really pulled all of those things together. What Laura in that video that I showed, and we'll put a link to all this in the notes, talked about the reason that they wanted to name the school after Annie Jump Cannons was because she demonstrated the innovative power of the underappreciated. And one of the quotes in the article comes from one of the survivors, which was, I'm going to read it. "For the first time in my life, I have shed survivor or victim as my identity. I was having to survive on being a survivor because that's how I was making money, speaking about what happened to me. Now I want to talk about coding." And I just love that. I love that. And so if you go back to the Wired article, you saw some of those beautiful art pieces that were in there. That came from a project they did where they took portraits of the women and then they were printed out, and it doesn't explain it exactly, but I guess they were like shredded and cut apart and then rewoven into these collages so that they could create the portraits while still not identifying the women.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Wow.
so the story combined STEM, it combines art, it combines empowerment. It's part of our glossed over initiative. So so I wanted to share it with y'all.
Wow.
Aw, I want to give
That
you
is-
and the story a hug. It's so
That's how I
good.
felt when I read it. And just, you know, having the opportunity to shine a light on an organization. The other last thing I'll say is, you know, so often when we talk about these glossed over stories, we're talking about someone in history whose story wasn't known. But I think for this, it's when we think about women today who are glossed over, the story of these survivors and their stories are so often below the surface of what we encounter. So to be able to shine a light on triumphs that they're having, it's another version of folks who have been glossed over and whose stories really deserve to be out there and celebrated. And, you know, if they're ready to stop even talking about being survivors and focus on them as triumphant women in STEM.
As creators, because that's what coding is you're creating.
Absolutely. That is so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
No problem.
Wow. Very cool.
Well, Gia, what do you have this week?
I have something back, we had I think 2 episodes ago was our climate episode, maybe
Mm-hmm.
3. I don't know. I've lost track now at this point. Anyhow, and I was thinking a lot about plastic use, and I've tried very hard to do those, plastic-free challenges. And I mean, I don't go to Starbucks and get a coffee. I don't do any of that. But how to avoid plastic at the grocery store, I have no idea. And there's only so much stuff that you can make or literally have time to make in the course of one's life, right? I mean, if it would be wonderful if I could prepare every single thing from scratch all the time from ingredients that I bought in bulk and then stored dramatically in my pantry like Gwyneth.
Your pantry lab. We're going to call it the
Yeah,
pantry lab,
the
I like
pantry
that.
lab.
right?
Yeah, I like it. So I wish that could happen, but that's not true. So one of the things that irks the crap out of me is Trader Joe's, because I love Trader Joe's and I have the best customer service there. And I had read recently, I'll have to try and find it again, but that they were trying to reduce the amount of plastics in their produce. And I happened to stumble across this fantastic piece about how supermarkets in Thailand and Vietnam using banana leaves instead of plastic. Totally biodegradable. I mean, there's nothing that exciting, science-wise here. I just think it's fantastic that they're already doing this, and so they can do your bulk weight. It's not going to add to, any issues in your scales. Totally reusable. Now, these ones still have obviously a plastic sticker on here. So these folks in Sweden, they stepped it up. They're using label laser printing on this, and this is an article, my friends, that is more than 3 years old. I am confounded at how difficult it is to make change when it comes to these sorts of things, especially considering staggering statistics. Like, look at this beautiful turtle. We are polluting the ocean with around 12.7 million tons of plastic a year. According to the EPA, we recycle less than about 9% of all of the plastic that is generated. It is a out and out crisis, and yet we don't have any kind of movement for that here on any substantial kind of level. And I even find small little things like, Tamara, you may have this issue. I have weird things in my renter's agreement that don't allow me to, for example, dry my clothes on the balcony, even though I don't have a dryer here. And it's far more ecologically efficient to dry your clothes outside than it is. That's like, your dryer is kind of one of the worst things in your house for energy suck. And yet I'm prohibited as a renter from doing that.
And microplastics when you're drying, and then that goes in the washing machine, it goes into the water.
Yep, absolutely.
System.
Every time.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like I'm going to start doing it, and then I kind of want to get a citation, and then I kind of want to go to the city, and I kind of want to start a whole thing.
For those of you who are not as familiar with Scirens, just know Gia is our climate warrior. I mean, it's obviously something we're all concerned with, but Gia is out on the front lines of this.
Well, I also am on the front lines of maintaining a lovely wardrobe, and every time you dry your clothes, it's not good for them, my friends. Yes. Anything with elastic, which is a fiber that will then pollute our water system, it also is not good for the clothes. Anyway.
That's true. Spandex either. Spandex in the dryer, not a good thing.
No.
Oh, yeah, no.
I have all my workout stuff. It's usually strewn all throughout the house. Wherever there's a hook or like a ledge that I can like drape things over. Yeah. There's usually 2 days where it's just clothes everywhere.
So anyway, I will, not now, because now is the absolute worst time to sort of challenge ourselves with this whole plastic issue, which is also infuriating. And it's very disheartening to hear, information coming directly out of the White House saying that they plan on absolutely doing the inverse of moving forward with green initiatives during the crisis. But I'm trying to challenge myself even more, and I want to see how much it actually costs if I actively try to only buy produce that has never been in a plastic piece. Because you can buy a lot of things one-off, but they are much more expensive, or there's not available, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I'm going to track that. But I'd love to see what you think, if you think about shopping in plastics any differently now.
What do you think of at Trader Joe's, they no longer had the other type of plastic bags that you could put your produce in, but they have those green ones that are those biodegradable? Because, I think of the amount, I use those putting my vegetables or fruit in, but then I reuse them for cat litter, to scoop cat litter. And then I think of my biodegradable bags that I use for when I walk my dog. Like, how biodegradable are those actually, or is that a myth?
It's sort of a myth, is my understanding, that those bags are biodegradable if they're in compost conditions, but if they're in a landfill, they aren't in a place where they can actually then biodegrade. And the litter, as you know, that'll stay forever and ever, because if you have a silica in there, it'll just go for a million years. For the dog walking, it has a chance to break down more because it's just got organic material inside of it. But yeah, essentially, no, it's a lesser evil, but it's one of, and we have it too. We don't have a compost bin at the apartment complex either. We only have a recycling bin and a trash bin. And I called the city to try and have one added, and they said it would be $127 a month, and the landlord said no. And so we don't have it.
Luckily we do in our neighborhood. So one of the things that
good.
we've kind of made a commitment to in 2020 is, now, you used to not be able to do this, but now in LA, at least our part of LA, the green bin, you can actually, in addition to putting yard waste in there, you can put compostable food waste. And you have to be really careful because you don't want to screw up the bin. So, it's like waste that it's not like the leftover that you've eaten. It's like if you're making a salad, it's, the cucumber peel and the end of the cucumber that you don't put in your salad. Right. So we've made a pretty strong commitment to really trying to get that waste in there. So at least it's going to the right place and adding to compost and keeping, less food waste out of landfills and such. But it's interesting because I think we're recording this on a Thursday, which is the morning that they pick up garbage in my neighborhood. And so every Wednesday night, it's like, all right, get out the bags of compost. So we have it's like an aluminum box that's probably like 6 inches by 12 inches. And we fill that up and that stays in the fridge. But inevitably we have more, compostable food scraps. So I now take Ziploc bags and I throw it in there, and we kind of just like store it on the side, because we don't want to throw it right away into the compost bin outside, because we'll get all kinds of critters. And we've had raccoons in our ceiling before, so we learned the hard way.
They're smart.
Yeah, they're really smart.
Yeah.
So we keep it in the fridge until the night before. So like last night, it was like, okay, bring out the compost. And then I'll take that Ziploc bag and we'll dump it, and then I'll wash that out and we'll use it to refill. So that's one thing I have been able to keep doing. But, there was I also made a commitment this year to try to really reuse the plastic shopping bags that I have. I think I even posted this on my Instagram. So when you get the bags from CVS and Target and places like that, there's actually print on the bottom that says the bag is meant to be used 125 times. And I'd never read that before. I mean, I was always trying to reuse bags anyway, but I never read that before. And so I sort of made like a challenge for myself that I would do that and kind of start marking off how many times I'd used it. And then the pandemic hit and everything's gone a little wonky with like your own bags versus other bags. And
you can't use your own.
Yeah, well, it depends on where you go. So I go to one of the farmers markets that's still open. There is social distancing. And that stuff, they do allow you to bring your own bags. But of course, simply by virtue of being in the market, it's touching other things. So then what we're doing at the moment is we bring them, we take everything out outside, we bring the produce inside to wash and scrub, and then we take the bags and we just let them sit out in the sun for a couple of days. So I don't know, it's a big puzzle, and every case is so different with the kind of plastic and where you can put it and where it will be effective. So yeah, I'm trying not to become overwhelmed by it.
It was crazy when I was in New Orleans, when I would go grocery shopping, and they were still using the really thick white plastic bags for groceries, and they would just like double bag, and there's like literally you'd come away with 20 plastic bags and you're like, what am I supposed to do with these? Like,
was paper an option or no?
Nope.
Wow.
Actually, no, paper was an option at one of the places, but it didn't have handles. And I was walking to my hotel. And I had like a huge bunch of, because I didn't have a car there. And so it was either I could, get one garbage bag, one paper bag and hold it underneath, or I would have to use the other. And I just figured I would keep reusing them.
So speaking of paper bags, so maybe you both can actually give me advice on this, because it's a question that's been floating in my mind. So prior to all of this, generally what I do when I go to the market is I use a mix of sort of the sturdy reusable grocery bags, and then I get some paper bags, because those are the bags that then when I get home, we put our recycling in and put into the recycling bin. So I feel like I need the paper bags to do that with.
Us too. That's what we do.
Okay, is my thinking right on that? Because then there's a part of me that's like, should I be using all recyclable bags and no paper? But then what do I put the paper in when I'm putting it in the thing? Because I'm not going to put a plastic bag in there.
You all are going to think I'm crazy. No,
tell us. That's why I'm asking.
I'm so extreme.
What do you do?
I'm so extreme. I only use reusables. In fact, I have hand sewn bags my sister and I made. Yeah, we're just those gross hippies.
No, I love that you're that person.
Or for the produce, like, and then so like we invert them, and then you can scoop up your mushrooms or whatever, and then you tie it off. And anyway, so yeah, I have not used grocery bags since 2001, I think.
Okay, but so what do you do
for your garbage?
For your garbage when you're putting recyclables in?
I have a separate garbage can that has like a lift out that's just for recyclables, that then we take out to the big recycling bin outside.
So you just throw it in loosely. Okay, gotcha. It's not like contained.
It's not because it doesn't, in that sense, it doesn't need to be, because there's nothing, shouldn't be anything in there that can spoil, right? It should just be actual recycling things, which, by the way, everybody should check county by county, because every county has different things that recycle. So
I want you to write a book.
I want to write a whole book about how it is. I try really hard to live it, but I feel I fall so short. But it's, there was a piece that I believe I know one of you posted on our Twitter. It was on Grist, and it was a woman talking about how we've got to stop this mea culpa personal guilt and really start demanding institutional change.
Yes, I did. And Vice just came out with I think it was Vice or Vox or Vice, one of the two, just a new piece just came out saying, stop shaming about recycling. You have to just get on the fossil fuel industry and stop fossil fuels. Mm-hmm. Like the small minutia, it doesn't matter anymore.
It doesn't add up.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Although, so here's something. So the temple that I go to, I believe it does, but also the synagogue that I go to has a lot of climate change initiatives. It's a big part of kind of the ethos. It's a very activist oriented Jewish community. And what?
Sorry, my dog is outside.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if he can be outside.
We will continue this conversation, but I think we're going to stop there then, because we're going to take care of the dog.
Yeah.
I'm like, he should not be outside on his own. Why is he outside? Okay.
All right. Well, take care, everybody.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Take care. Bye.